Hello, everyone. It is good to be back with you. You know, the NAACP is the oldest Black organization in America, and that is no secret to anyone. It has gone through a lot of presidents, it has a lot of chapters across the United States. The newest president of the Bridgeport chapter is Dr. Leslie Valgren, and he is here today to share some of the ideas that he wants to bring in his new role. And I have to tell you, I like a lot about what this man has to say because I agree with financial literacy, civic engagement. I agree with all that and understanding young people understanding their civil rights. I understand all that. And it is something that we really need to impress upon our younger generation because believe it or not, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. So I was there when all of this went down. And still, all these years later, what is it, like 60 years? And still, a lot of young Black people don't understand their rights. And that is important that they do understand that. So, we're going to be talking about that and a whole lot more. But before I get to that, we've ran out of time. And I really wanted to get across this message about the NAACP. They're holding their annual gala, and they're going to be honoring their heroes and sheroes, as they put it. And that's going to be happening on Sunday, February the 22nd. It's taking place at the Trumbull Marriott Hotel, and tickets are available now. And the Chief Justice of the Connecticut Supreme Court, the Honorable Richard Robinson, is going to be the keynote speaker. So I'm sure it is going to be a good time had. It's a formal affair, so you get to dress up and act important and eat food. So I just wanted to make you aware that that is happening. I'm James Walker. This is Real Talk, Real People. Let's get right to the conversation. We start out by you telling us a little bit about yourself because I don't think many people are familiar with you and who you are and what you're about. So why don't you start there? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Dr. Leslie Valbrun. I am a native of Massachusetts. I come from there by way of California. So I went to school out in Massachusetts and then went to get my master's degree at Loma Linda University in California. And then from there, I came to Connecticut, to Bridgeport specifically, about 10 years ago, and went to the University of Bridgeport, got my doctorate there in chiropractic, and has had the opportunity to teach there and build other doctors up so that we can have a great future in chiropractic, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I work at the community health centers in both Meriden and in Norwalk. So I have the opportunity to serve there and reach individuals I otherwise would never have had the opportunity to get the type of services that we provide, these specialty services. So uh, and just doing my best to make sure I impact the community from that front. And of course, I joined the NAACP a few years back. And through the tutelage and mentorship of Reverend Lord and others, have worked in the community to try to not only influence with education, and I'm talking about the financial education and financial literacy and economic development and all that. I worked more on that end, but just making sure that people are aware of their rights or aware of their civil liberties, and of course, making sure that people have a voice at the table. So that's just a little bit about myself.
Okay. You know, why do you think that blacks still don't think they have a seat at the table and that they still don't understand their civil rights? Maybe I can understand them saying, look, we still don't have a seat at the table. But certainly at this point, Black people should understand their civil rights. But you're right, many don't. So what do we do to get them to understand their civil rights and how to go about imposing their civil rights other than just, a lot of loud talking and so forth?
Mhm.
How do we get that done?
Disenfranchisement runs deep.
Yes, it does.
It's a systemic issue. Oftentimes, people say, well, why is it, that we have these problems, or, how is it that we have these other issues? Well, think about this for a second, right? The right to vote occurred in the 60s. I mean, that's the 60s.
I know I was there.
You see what I'm saying? Like it's within people's lifetime. People are still living that experience today. People are still fighting. The three major legislations of the 60s are where we're have propelled us to where we are today. And sometimes we think about the overt racism, or the overt systemic racism, or even the overt disenfranchisement, but
Right.
oftentimes it becomes more sophisticated. Like, for example, let me give you an example just so that
Sure.
we can dive a little deeper. um, let's talk names. Just names alone. There are certain names that uh, employers may not necessarily they look at your name and they say, yeah, we're not going to hire this person.
That's
Or they
correct.
might not put your resume at the top of the pile, right? And so even in that process, it makes it so much harder for you to get a job that you are well qualified for. And so there are little things like that, making assumptions before we even have the conversation.
Conversation.
Yeah,
And
right. And I'll tell you this. Oftentimes, for my first name is Leslie. Okay, my first name is Leslie, and most people will think, oh, it's a woman,
it's a
right?
woman.
And I trust me, I get that all the time. And so even with my patients, sometimes they see the name on the door and they automatically think, oh, it's a lady. They come in and they're like, wait a minute.
Wait a
Not
minute. I'm in
only
the wrong room.
Right. Not only are you a man, but as a chiropractor, and you're a black man on top of it. Okay. So it's because there's just the truth is, in my profession, there's just not a whole lot of black folk, young black folk, who are actually within the profession, who are doing things. And so I can understand why there are there are covert issues that we still have to deal with, and it's one of the reasons why individuals may feel like they don't have a seat at the table, because they aren't allowed, or they're not able to get to those places so that they can really show what they can do,
Well,
who
it's
they
really
are.
interesting that you mentioned names. It's very interesting because before I retired, well, even after I retired, I wrote columns. And
Mhm.
one of the columns that I wrote was about names and the fact that one of those hidden things that white America doesn't see is the application process, where someone sees what is obviously a black name and they
Sure.
automatically take that resume and shove it to the side.
Hmm.
And I got a lot of feedback, no, that's not true. No, that's not true. And, I said, the proof is in the pudding here.
Right.
The proof is in the pudding. I mean, you can't tell me that none of these black people qualified for that position. So it
Right.
is indeed a problem, just like the hairdo. It
Mm.
needs to be shocking
Oh,
that you need to pass legislation that allows black people to wear their hair the way
right,
they want. But
right.
again, it's another one of those things. It's what I call, and of course, then they pass the legislation. It's what I call jab and retreat. We don't
Hmm.
want it. You have to fight for it, and now we retreat once you
Right.
fight for it. So it's one of those ridiculous things.
No, absolutely. And to your point, how do we then change the system? How do we then push forward? It's legislation. It's legislation. It's not just legislation on a piece of paper and just we ignore it and we don't enforce it. We've got to have legislation that has teeth, something that we can stand behind, and that
That's
we can say,
correct.
hey, I understand my rights. Now, oftentimes when we look at like civic courses and talking about our rights, uh, there isn't always this discourse at home. There isn't this discourse in school. The discourse does not often occur about what are my actual rights. We learn so much in school over the years about the Constitution, about America's independence. We learn all of these different things, but other than understanding those at a basic level, we don't know much about our state laws. The state laws are
That's correct.
absolutely important, right?
And
And
critical for you to
oh,
know.
absolutely critical,
Right.
right? So, and I'll jump into it like this. With our youth and young adults, right? And even, of course, our seasoned veterans. I'll just call them our seasoned veterans, right? Those who have
Okay.
been, those who have the wisdom, right? Uh, we want to build four areas, and we want to develop within the NAACP. And as we continue to build, we want to focus in on four areas. Number one is competency, right? You've got to be competent, and we have to make sure that our youth and young adults, those who we are mentoring, those who we are developing, for the next generation, for this generation as well, to come up and be competent.
That's
We want
correct.
you to understand the issues. We want you to know your history. And it's not to say that you'll be perfect, but at least understand what's going on. Understand the temperature in the room, feel the temperature in the room, as they like to say,
As
right?
it is.
And then the second thing is competency builds confidence, right?
That's
As
correct.
as as corny as it may seem, the truth is that when you are competent and you understand what's going on and you're aware of the issues, you feel more confident to speak on it,
To
to
speak on
do
it,
something about
to
it.
act on it. Right.
Absolutely. And that way you can step up.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll get back to the conversation in a minute. But I just want to take time to remind folks that my book, Dead Windows, is available through Amazon. You can buy the ebook, the paperback, and or the hardcover. I think it's a good read. I think you'll enjoy reading it. Also, if you like our content here, hit that subscribe button, like and share our videos. We will surely appreciate it and help us grow. Okay, let's get back to the conversation.
So we want those two things for sure. So that's competence, that's confidence. The next thing is courage, right? So how do we build that courage in somebody? Well, if you're competent and you're confident, courage is going to follow,
That's
right?
correct.
So we're trying to make sure that we do that. But then the last one is we don't want you to be a character. We want you to have character, right? Character's the big deal, a big deal. So while we're doing all of that, while someone is in their calling, in their area of gifting, in their area of interest, we want to help them build those other four areas so that they can do something in this world, and at the same time they can impact this world positively. That's what
You,
we're here for. That's why we're trying to make a difference.
I find that that competency and confidence,
Mm-hmm.
those are really big factors in
Oh,
young
yes.
Black lives. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what I hear constantly, even though they may not be saying it, is that they don't have the confidence that they can do this. They
Mm-hmm.
don't feel that they are competent enough to do this, and it's just, and I hate to say it, but I think a lot of that comes from a lack of bad parenting, because
Mm-hmm.
we have we have left too much in teachers' hands.
Mm-hmm.
Civil rights and your rights is something that your parents should be teaching you. Your civic engagement, getting involved in the
Mm-hmm.
community, understanding your legislature, your state laws, and so forth and so on.
Sure.
Everything can't be learned in a classroom. Your parents must help you and guide you. So that's a problem, and I'm sure you're aware that that is a problem. What do
Sure.
we do about that, man? Because it really, really is a problem.
You you know, so in my study on how do we deal with that specific issue when it comes to parenting, it's really hard for a parent who is working to put food on the table so that the next generation can then make something of themselves. It is a challenge for them to be able to spend that time.
Yes,
It's
I agree.
and it's not an excuse, but I understand that if you don't work, if you aren't doing those things, well, then how are we going to eat? How are we going to make something of ourselves per se?
Right, but
And
I think also in doing that though,
sure.
aren't you sending a bad message to your kid? If
Well,
you say, okay, well, I'm working, so I don't have time to teach about this and about that, because I think some of these things, like in with my family, we learned at the dinner table. It wasn't a you learn at the dinner table.
right.
We had to talk about a current event. Each one of us
Hmm.
had to bring a current event to the table and talk about it. So
Hmm.
it's how you go about doing it. You don't have to make a
Right.
big production about it.
Of
You know
course.
it's during the
Hmm.
course of eating.
Right.
You can bring about and you know so much knowledge just by eating and passing on so much knowledge. So I think I agree with you about the work. I understand that. I grew up
For
low
sure.
income, poor, and all the rest. I agree. I get it. But again, I think a lot of these things can be done at the dinner table. I think the biggest problem that I see
Well,
is we don't expect. We don't
well,
expect our kids to get A's. We don't expect them to do this. And I think we need to raise our expectation. Now, I know a lot of people don't agree with me. I understand that. But
mhm.
I think that we allow too much of, you know, I expect my kids to do this. I expect my kids to do this. And I expect them to do this because I
Mhm.
am showing them the way.
Right.
So, that's where I come from.
No, and here's the thing. I completely understand your perspective. And to what I was saying before, the converse is also true, right? Where while you have someone who is working and who is doing their absolute best, conversations still need to occur.
Right.
And right. So here's the thing. It's not parenting obviously doesn't happen by osmosis. Right. Like no one learns that way. I wish, have you ever watched the movie The Matrix? And I'm not
Yes.
promoting, like we'd all love to download the information and just
Hmm.
go about our lives. But that's not how it's done. We learn by example. And oftentimes, while the parent, because I'm only speaking to a specific group of individuals, while the parent may be working hard to do whatever they can to make sure there's food on the table, to make sure that there's a roof over the head, all of those things. It is also important for the parent to be intentional about having conversations about
Right.
things that not only matter to the parent, but also about things that are going out in this world.
That's
Because the
correct.
truth is, as much as we love to say parents are teachers at home, but the child is also providing information
Amazing.
to the parent. So it's a symbiotic relationship where you have different entities, or these two persons having dialogue together. And I think that as a part of this, there are other issues that come along, with this parenting issue.
Sure.
One
Sure.
one of them is we have a lot of homes where it's a one parent home, it's a
It's a
single
single.
parent home, and I can tell you this: fatherlessness is a huge problem. It's so
Very
much.
huge.
Matter of fact, I would say it's an epidemic, but the truth is it's a pandemic, right? It's
It's
not. It
pretty
may not
bad.
necessarily be. It's a problem. Um, and the issue that I see there is you look at the statistics, you look at the data. Okay, it is important that fathers are in the lives of their children. Okay, and it is important that they are providing information, resources, and so much more. So a lot of the issues that we have is not just because, oh, the system has failed us and all of that.
Hmm.
I believe that parenting, and I support parents to be able to do their best, to do their very best. But here's the thing: it takes a village. It absolutely takes a village. And that's one of the reasons why we promote mentorship so much. We understand that, look, I'm not an electrical engineering engineer, right? Or let's say, for example, my kid is interested in electronics. I might not be the electronics guy, but I know someone who
Who is?
dives in deep into that. Well, let's see how far your interest is going to go in relation to this. And so we have to understand what our limitations are and be aware of those limitations and understand from an introspective perspective, so that we can then say, okay, well, I may not be able to help you in this, but I know someone who can, and
There's a
let me help.
commercial on TV. It's a good commercial. It's about a father who never rides a bicycle. He doesn't know how to ride a bicycle, and
Mhm.
but his kids do. And
Sure.
he says, people say, "Well, how can your kids learn to ride a bicycle if you don't?" And so he says, "I just put them in the environment where they had the tools to learn."
Right.
Yeah. So I mean that parenting is just so critical, and
Mhm.
and bad parenting obviously is a major problem. And I see a lot of bad parenting. And obviously, I am, as you probably are understand after I just showed you my memoir,
Sure.
I'm big on parenting and how devastating some acts that parents do
Mhm.
can have on their children. So
Sure.
parenting to me is critical. And you're right. It starts with conversation and an exchange of conversation. And, one of the things I wanted to actually talk with you about is this financial literacy,
Sure.
because, you know, we don't understand as a people, I don't think, or I should say, a vast majority of us, because of our income levels,
Mhm.
don't understand financial literacy. And it's another one of those things I wrote about. I turn on the TV on the Today Show. They have this
Mhm.
financial expert talking about saving this, having 6 months
Right.
of, rent or mortgage saved up. And I say, who the hell are these people talking to? I can't save a week, let
Right.
alone 6 months. So, but how do we get to that? How do you get that
Oh man.
young people
Uh,
that message?
Here's the thing. Start small, but start. That's really what it boils down to. Start small, but start. And financial literacy is not just about learning the information, right? You might have the knowledge, but now it's also application, right?
That's correct.
So people say knowledge is power, but applied knowledge is wisdom, right? And so we have to be wise with our wealth. We have to be wise with our income. Now, there are individuals who are in a position, there are families that are in a position where they can't, there's no saving.
There are no savings.
There's none
None.
of that,
None.
right? So then how can you how you're learning about all this information, but then how can you actually get started? Well, there are plenty of things that can help people. Like for example, are you familiar with the baby bonds?
Is that's I think that's Connecticut's new thing where they're going to put $5,000 in, and which is a wonderful thing. To
Right.
me, I wish you know, I
Oh,
wish
come
because
on. I
so
wish.
many of us want to start, but we don't
Right.
have the capital. And
Right.
quite
Right.
frankly, people of my era, we had parents, or I should say, a struggling mother who, each of us had the electric in our names, we had the gas in our names, we had the phone in our names. So
Right.
by the time we hit the streets running as adults, we already
Mhm.
had bad credit,
Right.
before anything started. So how do you work your way out of that? How do you work your way
Well,
out of that?
the thing is, you've got to be intentional.
Right.
You have to be intentional. And as much as, well, in this world today, so much is placed on how we look, right? So much is placed on, oh, I got to have the nice car. I've got to, do this and that. I'll give you an example real quick. I had this beautiful car that I loved with all my heart, man. This was my dream car. It was this beautiful Audi. I said, oh man, this is the way. And at the time, I was perfectly fine, doing what I had to do, paying things off. And what I had done is I had planned for it. So I'd saved up my money. But you know what? And I hate to say this about that specific car, is it was a lemon. It was it was sucking all of my money. So, at a certain point, you got to cut your losses,
Right.
right? At a certain point, you got to say, okay, well, I just can't keep doing this. And so the long and short of it is we have to then say, okay, well, what's my budget? How can we plan for all these different things and also plan for the thing that is to come and we have no idea because something's coming. We
Right.
just don't know
Something's
when
coming.
it's
Yes.
coming, right?
Unfortunately, but something is coming. Right.
Right, something exactly. It's it's being intentional and saying, you know what? I don't have $100 to put away, but I got five, right? And sometimes it's to do without, right? So, for example, I know some individuals, they got Netflix, they got HBO, they got Showtime, they're subscribed to all of these things,
Who told you?
right?
Right.
But then how much of it are you actually going to watch, right? So I'm just giving an example. I'm not throwing
No,
shade
man,
on.
you are absolutely right. I everybody I know, they subscribe to all these apps, but
Right,
they're really only watching one show here, a show
right,
here, so it's
right.
a waste of money.
Right. But the thing is, we have to understand that those fun what we hold back on today, what we deny ourselves today is an opportunity for tomorrow. And we have to understand that. So if I take monies today and I say, all right, I'm going to invest that money. Now, most people are saying, well, where do I invest that money? That's always the age old question. Where do I put that money? Okay, fine. But if you just do it anyway, you invest that money, just the $5, in a year or two, you're putting $5 every month or every week or whatever it is, it eventually will grow. And that growth is what can help you then turn around and say, okay, well, I need to do X, Y, and Z. I need to do that. I need to do that. You have to plan the end from the beginning. And that's a hard thing.
That's
And
a
like,
hard thing to do.
I
But you
mean,
have to. That's how it's
but
done.
you don't have the thing is, there are too many times where we go to funerals and they don't even
We
have
go
enough money.
to we go to GoFundMe funerals.
Yeah, right,
And I was getting ready to, that was my next thing to you, insurance. Why don't Black parents understand that if you start it at the right time, that $20 or $30 a month that you are paying can set your kids up for life.
for
And
life.
it is one of the things that used to anger me when I talk to some Black men, and they don't want
You
to leave the money so that she can spend it on somebody. Give me a break. I mean,
know,
it's just so stupid. It's such it's so stupid, So that is an area where I think, because that's how a lot of these young people get money. That's why
right.
they're able to buy homes at age 25 because their grandparents left them insurance money and so forth. So,
Sure.
is that part of your financial literacy that you
Absolutely.
want to teach?
Absolutely. And to the point that you were making just now, you know, the family that I come from, right? The guys have always instilled in us, you got to provide, you got to protect, you got to produce, you got to make sure that you profess. And I'm talking about when we talk about profess, you got to profess your love, right?
Right.
And the thing is, you know, if I go today, I still want my person to be happy.
Happy.
Like,
Right.
and the thing is, I don't want an issue to show up or a problem to show up that she may not necessarily be prepared for, and it can't get taken care of.
Right.
Like,
Particularly
and
when it involves your children that you leave
oh,
behind and so forth. It's just
it,
insane that you
right,
do not want to take care of your family when you're
right.
gone. It's just
So and that's the thing. It boils down to and I don't want to get dive in too deep on this, but it depends on your values and what you value. And that is a huge. I mean, that's a whole conversation
that's
all
a
by
whole
itself,
conversation by
right?
itself. But you're
Um,
absolutely right. That's what it comes
right,
down to. Who do you
right,
value? What do you value?
right.
But listen, we're running close to time here, and I just
Okay,
wanted to touch on one other thing before we get off here, and that
sure.
is The previous president, the Reverend
Yes.
Stanley Lord, he
Yes.
a lot of his focus was on police brutality and
Sure.
police issues in
Hmm.
Bridgeport, um, and he managed to get some
Oh,
things
yes.
done.
Yep.
We do have, you know, a serious issue with police, and it seems to be getting worse. And
Yeah.
and it's not just. I mean, we have known for a long time. It's not just white officers; it's
Oh, come
black
on, man.
officers too,
It's
and
across the board.
but it's across the board.
Sure.
Um, any idea of how you're going to approach that, or do you have a plan outlined there, or what do you plan to do there?
So in terms of policing, well, first and foremost, we acknowledge Reverend Lord and his passing. He was a great mentor to a lot of young people.
Mm-hmm.
And, in his work, he is one of the key reasons why in Bridgeport, I believe Chief Porter is now there because, we wanted to make sure that there was representation.
Right.
We wanted to make sure that there was that competency to make sure that individuals can do their job. Now that you're there, you can do your job. Our main focus is we don't want symbolism without substance.
Yeah,
There's got to be substance that
agreed,
comes
one
with
hundred
that
percent.
symbol. Let's be clear about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we don't want
So,
to put you there for you to smile and just pat us on the head. That's not why
no,
you're there.
no, we're not there for that. And
Yes.
so community policing, what does that look like? What is the plan? Why is it that we have not seen officers walking in the street, walking their beat? Okay, and I understand they're understaffed and maybe underfunded and all these other things, but still, we need officers to interact with the community, and because that's a huge part of it. Cultural competency is another one. Cultural competency is huge. Most people will say cultural sensitivity. No, no, no. We want you to be competent, right? So cultural competency is absolutely important, which means that you have to not only to a degree look like the community, but you also have to understand the community that
Understand
you're
the community.
serving, that you're serving. Because here's the thing, it's to serve and to protect. See, when we talk about leadership, right? Good leaders understand that service undergirds leadership. If you want to influence positively, then you've got to serve positively. If
That's
you
correct.
if you if you want to be a great leader, the more people you serve, the greater your service, the more you become a leader, or the more your leadership is sought after. And
Well,
so
as they
as yep, okay,
go
yep,
ahead, no, but as they say in our community, we don't need somebody to talk the talk. We need somebody to
yep,
walk the walk. That's what we need.
absolutely, absolutely, which means that justice, equity, equality has to be a part of every step of the process so that when we have officers that are out in the street and we know that that job is a tough job, that they will do justly, that they will serve and protect the people that are quite literally paying them
Paying them.
to
And I
do
think
their job and to do their job effectively.
And
uh,
I also would
yeah,
like to get away from this, this thing that every time something happens, well, their job is tough and so forth. They know that going in. So enough
sure.
of their job is tough. You know that going in. Of course, the job is tough. It's a tough job, but that doesn't explain or allow you leeway to do some of the horrible things that are
No,
happening today. We
right.
are pretty much out of time. Is there
Okay.
anything left that I have not asked you that you want people to know?
Well, we just want everybody to know that we are here, that we are ready to do more work and to take things to the next level. We want to impact positively. And of course, we want to make a difference, and we will make a difference in our communities and the surrounding communities of the Bridgeport area.
You've been listening to Real Talk, Real People. If you would like to be on the show, if you have an idea for the show, give us a call at 203-605-1859 or drop us an email at realtalkrealpeoplect@gmail.com. You folks have a good week, and we'll talk again next week.